Are you very aware that you try to preserve fleeting moments?
Well, it depends what you call fleeting. Sometimes, in the geologic sense, a year is a very fleeting moment. And sometimes with the people, it's a 25th of a second. Of course, if I know something is very obvious, in just a few moments or a few minutes, it's going to be perfected. If there was a funny little cloud moving out of the sky, if it had no relation to the picture, did nothing for it, I would wait till it left. But on the other hand, if I keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, the light changes, the mood changes, the excitement changes. So I'm supposed to see it rather swiftly.
The extraordinary tonality of the shades of gray and black and a little bit of white, is that what happens in the camera, or is that what happens in the printing?
No, you see, of course, again, none of my images are realistic in terms of values. I mean, the original is much softer than the photograph. And in order to get certain vitality, if I kept a lot of shadow in here, I would have a totally different picture. So I sometimes will let things go very deep. In other words, it's a manipulation of value, intentional manipulation.
But it also gives the photograph an extraordinary clarity and crispness.
It's like the piano. You have 88 keys. You can go from the lowest to the highest, or you usually work within a few octaves. Or there were some magnificent things within just an octave or two. So it's all a matter of the basic feeling. This, again, is a fleeting moment in nature, and a few hours later, there's a change. It's just a disappearing ice flow on Ellery Lake, that is east of Yosemite. And it, again, it is intentionally the background and the water itself painted very deep, simply because of the excitement of this sunlit illuminated ice. Now, don't ask me why I did it, I just couldn't help doing it. I like things usually in fairly soft, rich light, and it's a sunrise in late autumn in the Rocky Mountains. And there again, the subject was very soft and would be very gray and uninspiring in a black and white, but it's, again, beautiful in color. But here we have to expand, so we expand the contrast. Because we know we have to have in the print to become exciting value something like this to this. I mean, this is still on the border. There was still substance. It's not a black hole. But if that is a weaker variation, from my point of view, then it would become rather insipid. I happen to like this photograph very much. It was made in Cape Cod many, many years ago. And it's an interesting matter of interpretation, because my first prints tried to capture the very soft gray light of the area. And I became dissatisfied with the qualities of the prints. So I simply improved the printing, I think, by increasing values and strength.
But there are the two steps. I mean, one is the moment of taking the photograph, and the other one is when you actually print the photograph.
Well, that's an important question. Actually, there's two ways. One is to take an average exposure, just shoot, you know. And I hate that word, but click. And then you process, and you expect some miracles to happen. The sad fact is they very seldom happen. The attitude of the creative photographer, like, for instance, Edward West and Stigner's, people of that caliber, that they saw very clearly in their mind's eye, or in other words, they visualized the image before they made the photograph. Then the technique or the craft is simply applied as required. And while you do have certain, you might say, enhancements as you print, things details become revealed, you never can escape the original visualization. And you shouldn't. I mean, that's the negative, and you've got it. And I'm guilty of creating a cliche, which I use very often, is that in actuality, the negative is like the composer's score. All the information's there. And then the print is a performance. See, so you interpret this score at varying aesthetic emotional levels, but never far enough away to violate the essential concept.
So if somebody would take your original negative, which is the score, and print it up, one would end up with a totally different photograph because it's a different performance.
I hope it would be different. After all, when I was a pianist, I was playing music of Bach and Vivaldi and Mozart, who not only were long dead, but had never heard a grand piano. So, in a sense, any music, performance of that music is sort of a transcription A contemporary composition, which is made for the contemporary instruments, is something else.
Over there, the three prints are from the same negative, aren't they?
This is probably my first visualization. I chose a filter especially for the dramatic effect of the sky. So I began to see as a dark, heavy sky and intense shadows. And so it was made in 1927, and this is the first print, which is about 54 years old. And the big one, the end, was made here at about 1962 or 3. And this center one is about maybe 5 years old. So it's a case of different performances of the same negative.
But all three of them have totally different emotional qualities, haven't they?
Well, if I were a pianist and were giving a concert, I probably would play a particular piece very differently in February than I did in June, you see. So, or at least with 10 or 20 or 30 or 50-something years difference, you would have a different feeling.
So you think a negative has infinite possibilities of different prints?
Well, yes, with certain respect for the original intention, but I will give all my negatives and archive to the Center of Creative Photography in Tucson. And one of the stipulations with the negatives is that the advanced students or serious photographers will have an opportunity to print them for non-commercial use and under academic supervision. It just won't go in and fool with them. There'll be a sense that there'll be negatives that I hope will last for quite a while. And the thing that excites me is that within not too many years, we're going to have a entirely new medium of expression in the electronic image. So I've seen what can happen to a print reproduced by the laser scanner and how that is enhanced, and that's just the beginning. I also have seen some magnificent electronic images, direct electrical, not pictures of pictures. And I know the potentials are there. I know it's going to be wonderful. Well, in that sense, the negatives for these photographs, as an example, will take the place of a Frescobaldi or a Percival, you know, or some early composer, who will then be reinterpreted through a fresh medium. And I think that is marvelous. This is not a young negative. This is very hard to print. It was taken very early in the morning, autumn morning in Yosemite. The problem is that the values of the cliff and the values of the foliage and things are pretty close, so I had to expand the contrast on this. In a color photograph, this would be a very, very quiet, subtle thing, probably within just a very short range of values, which would be hopelessly dull in black and white. So I have allowed the shadows to go down almost to maximum depth, and then these pick up. And the difficulty, of course, is trying to separate values like this in rock, because nothing I can do. All these problems have to go through your mind, you know, like a carousel.
But you still work totally instinctively.
Well, I had to measure everything. I had, just at that time, a Western meter, so that I couldn't measure exactly. I could interpolate. And I got a pretty good idea of placements and values.
Would you take many photographs for a picture like that?
No, I usually take just one. I never brackets, with the following exception. This, I knew when I took this, it was a good image. It was going to be a good image, so I'd take two for protection. And accidents can happen, scratches and anything that had nothing to do with the actual photograph.
And if you compare the two of them, are they almost identical?
They would be the same. Oh yes. And you don't bracket now. Bracketing is a sign of insecurity when you say, gee, I don't know whether that's F25 and F11, I better try F8 and 16 and run, you know, but that means you don't really know what you're doing.
How does one avoid, for instance, a photograph like this just to become merely pretty?
Well, that's a matter of taste and, you know, it's your visualization. I can see all kinds of prettifications, if you want to use the word, but there is something that, if it relates to you in an aesthetic sense, that's all you can do.
Because the danger of the postcard, of course.
The danger of the literal postcard is just something that isn't very clearly seen. And again, Western had made some marvelous remarks, and one of them was that composition in photography is the strongest way of seeing.
Yes, I mean,